I can remember there was a product that had palm oil in it, right? Um, and it was a great product, and people just wouldn't buy it. It was at Whole Foods. And we had a conversation because the demos brought out that the palm oil was part of the problem. A lot of people were objecting to it. And we saw that as trends throughout the reporting that we do. So they made a strategic decision because they had fair trade palm oil, but they didn't go through the process because it was expensive and all of that. So they went through the process and they were able to put that it was fair trade palm oil. People didn't buy it, right? Because they just didn't think that that was what it was. So they changed it to a separate oil that was much more effective. Within a matter of 4 months, their overall sales spiked like 35%. And it was a game changer for them. That long-term change that came from the feedback from the demos funded their line extensions. They're super successful now.
Are you ready to hear more? Welcome to the Bulletproof Your CBG Brand podcast, where we discuss tactics and strategies that you need to give your brand the unfair competitive advantage it deserves. Hello, I'm Dan Lomans. There's a free downloadable guide at the end of every episode to help you go deeper into the topics we discussed. Now, let's roll up our sleeves and get started. Andrew, thank you for coming on today. Can you please start by sharing something about yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you're at today?
Dan, always great to chat with you. Appreciate all the work that you do. I'm Andrew with Samplers Inc. For those who don't know me, Vice President of Sales. I've been at the company uh, going on 15 years now. Sort of got into it because kept in touch with old college friends that I met the first weekend of school, and we've kept a great relationship over time. For me, outside of work, it's just really spending time with my two boys, um, trying to stay healthy in a crazy time of just work and life in general, being a dad. So, um, that's sort of my story.
Cool. And tell us a little bit about samplers. What do samplers do? What does it matter? Why does it matter? And the point being is that I used to run demos years ago, and we've talked about this a lot.
Yeah,
And what a great opportunity for a brand to not only get exposure, but the lift stays or remains long after the event ends. And that's not
right.
typical for most trade events.
Yeah, I mean, Samplers is a nationwide experiential agency. We do about 180,000 events a year of different types. I have a personal love for the natural specialty space, but we also have sort of segmented talent that also handle the conventional food space, adult beverage, and more experiential events sort of out in the community, whether it's concerts, guerrilla marketing, that type of thing, or parking lot events. And really, it's our ultimate goal is to support the experiences for the retailers that we're in, for the brands, gain exposure for the brands, make sure that people know that they're there, sort of take away that risk that people have to try new items, and drive overall sales, but with the experience as well. There's a marketing aspect to it, and there's a sales aspect to it, and we try and bring sort of that nice blend that supports everybody in the ecosystem. Sometimes we do business directly with the brands because retailers don't have a set um, vendor of record, let's say, within the organization. So they sit there and say, go out and find an agency that can go and do demos. And then other times we partner directly with the retailers, and you'll see that a lot more, especially with the regional retailers, and with Sam's Club in particular, where we actually run a portion of their test program, where we onboard new items, identify new items that are on trend, test it out in their ecosystem in 25 to 600 stores, and provide the data back to the buyers of, is this a good fit, and is it going to have legs to be able to meet their metrics from a square footage, sales perspective, which well from, your time of the precursor for Costco and such.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great opportunity, a great event. So thank you for sharing that. So we've talked a lot about some of the challenges. And so let's talk about the industry problem. Demos being treated as a tactical versus a strategic lever. Why does it, let's reframe that and then let's talk about why that matters and how a
Mhm.
brand can maximize the experience.
A lot of times when people are in the growth phase of a brand, particularly, cash flow is always an issue, right? And it's always a concern. You get into new doors, and the retailers today are starting to work towards media groups, or shopper marketing groups is what it used to be called, but now people are kind of calling it media groups with the advent of sort of digital and sort of, you know fairly unique tactics that are out there. And brands will sit there and use demos sometimes as a negotiation tool to be able to get in. But sometimes it turns into a check the box, where it's like, hey, we said we were going to do this, so we're gonna do a round of demos, and then we're gonna move on. Where it's almost looking at it as a finish line instead of a starting line, of getting in the doors. And really, what I try and encourage people to do on a more regular basis is figure out, sell for a little bit, establish your base sales inside a store through other promotions, whether it's temporary price promotion, signage, end caps, whatever it might be. Establish sort of your base sales, and then figure out not the top performing stores or the bottom performing stores, but let's figure out a subset of those middle performing stores that we can hit multiple times over a 3 to 5 month period strategically, because that's where the majority of the growth is going to be able to come from. The top performing stores are always going to be your top performing stores. The bottom performing stores might have other issues outside of anything that the brand has any control over, but that middle market of stores within a retailer is really important to focus on. And we can always pivot, right? But hitting the same store multiple times over a reasonable period of time will create a better return on investment, because the day of, very rarely do you cover the expense of the demo, right? It's more about looking back 4 weeks prior with no promos going on. What was your base sales? And 4 weeks after, to be able to sit there and say, not only did we have this many sales the day of the demo, but how many people came back and made that part of their regular shopping experience? And how can we impact that the most? And it's through product education, training, and really investing in the training of what's the story of the brand? What's the three main selling points? With the idea of you're selling against other items, right? What can you say positively about yourself without saying anything about another brand, where an educated consumer is going to go, I know why they said that. I know why that this makes them different. And this is why I want to try it. And then really, what are the common objections and misconceptions that um, consumers have about the brand? And how do you want us to respectfully overcome that, in a way that drives experience, education, and sales, essentially?
I love the fact that you framed it that way. I'm going to talk about base, but let's go back for a minute. Let's talk about what makes Sampler so unique and what makes you stand out in the industry. So the point being is that if you can visualize when you go to a store and there's someone handing out samples, a lot of companies just hand out the samples, but they don't understand the product. They're not connected to the product. It's just somebody that they're paying to stand there and just give out product. I mean, there's, when you say experiential market, let's talk about that and understand why that matters so much. And the reason I wanted to go here is because if you just demo your product, hand out samples, you're not making an impact. But if
Right.
you can bring someone into an experiential situation where there's a memory that's formed or an experience that's so positive that they want to share that, that's what matters. That's what's going to drive sales long term. So please talk a little bit about that and then how samplers uses that to differentiate themselves in the market.
So from a differentiation standpoint, really the training is critical. That's why I spent so much time sort of explaining those buckets because I think that that's probably the place that gets missed. It's all about figuring out the schedule, figuring out the distro to make sure that there's going to be enough product, and the training gets missed. We really focus and we really sit there and we'll encourage a delay in the actual events, which delays our revenue, right? But it's in the best interest of the ecosystem to make sure that the training is intact. That is probably one of the most critical, but one of the most overlooked in our industry, just in my opinion, right?
Could not agree more.
Secondarily, when it comes down to the actual experience inside the store, I'd ask sort of the people that are watching, what do you envision when you think of the in-store demo? And usually it's a cart somewhere along the racetrack, Mabel with a table, sort of hairnet, ready to go, usually a bubbly person, outgoing, hopefully, is the perception that you have, right? But how can we sort of change that, right? One of the things that we had was um, it was a charcuterie board, right? It was an all-in-one charcuterie board. So instead of us standing at the cart and just setting up a table on an end cap and blocking an end cap, one of the things that we talked about was getting them a chef's coat, getting them a nice hat, and doing past hors d'oeuvres throughout the store. So people weren't just, we didn't, one, have to rely on them walking up to us, but two, we created an environment that the retailer approved to sit there and say that we were okay to approach customers. And by and large, people loved it, right? Because it was a premium experience. There's sort of this, yeah, we know we're in a grocery store, but it felt a little bit like a nice cocktail party, and the person was dressed nice and sort of trained, and they knew about the cheese and they knew about what was sweet and they knew about all the different pieces of it. It really creates a different experience compared to there's a chip in a cup, and if you like it, it's $3.99 and now 5 for this week only, kind of thing. So that's what we try and do and get creative. There's certain times where we're cooking, right? So maybe it's a co-demo. If you have somebody that that complements you well, bad example, but a pasta sauce and a garlic bread company. Let's get the three together and let's split the cost and let's make your dollars go further and let's make the experience better for the retailer because you're going to be able to go back when you do your recaps or your top to tops to be able to sit there and say, here's some pictures of some events we did. And it wasn't just about me. It was about you, Mr. Customer. It was about you, Mr. Retailer. And the way that we did that was we cross-pollinated to make sure that the pasta sauce got bought, the pasta got bought, whatever the add-on was to that dish, where we gave the customer a 20-minute meal idea that cost them less, gave them a better perspective on the price of groceries, at your particular store, and we put on a great event.
Love that. Love that. So let's unpack. I want to go back and I want to unpack some of the things you said about base sales because I want to frame this. So base sales are the sales in the absence of a promotion. And any of the databases that you're using have that calculation. So you don't need to worry about figuring it out yourself.
Right.
But to your point, understanding base sales, that's your benchmark, that's your threshold. I mean, that's where you start. And then you want to look at where you're building. So if I take a product and I use a temporary price reduction, a TPR, I'm going to get a lift, and the lift is going to be small, but not very big. If I were to put that on an end cap, that product on an end cap, I'm going to get a huge lift. But the problem is, to your point, that after the event's over, typically that lift disappears, and so your base sales doesn't grow. So if you as you look at your sales, base sales removes that promotion from your sales, okay? And ideally you want base sales to trickle up. Typically, with most promotions, they remain flat or even decline depending on the category. So the point here is that while you get a nice spike, and this is why it matters, most founders or most brands look at the spike or the increase in sales. They don't look at what happened afterwards. That's not as important. Because if you're just worried, focusing on that, you're missing the point of the promotion. So let's keep going. So if I've got base sales and I have an event and it forces that number, that base sales number up, that's contribution that you can that the retailer takes to the bank. That's growth you can count on over time. So you mentioned having a promotion, a demo with multiple items. Brilliant idea. Because if I put 3 items on an end cap, the lift is exponentially higher. I'm introducing my product to other customers. And so we're, like you said, cross-pollinating. So my lift is going to explode. But again, that lift, if you just put it on an end cap, is going to be high, but base sales is probably going to go back to where it was. The key point here is, and the key takeaway is that when you create an experience, people come back time after time after time. They share it with their friend, and your base sales trickle up. So the reason this matters is because when you're looking at your trade spend, instead of just throwing money at trade spend, you're actually using this as a strategic growth lever. So the fact that you don't see the huge spike in base sales, because that takes time to realize, that's where the opportunity is. That's what you're trying to accomplish, is trying to grow that. So when we're talking about base sales, and some of the core drivers are trial, repeat, and habit, can you talk about that, your velocity signals to the buyer, and then how you also, I love the way you put this, retail confidence in terms of space. You're justifying it, but more importantly, you're giving the retailer what they want. And retailers want 3 things: more traffic in their store, reasonable profit, and they want contribution.
Yeah, from a trial repeat habit perspective, the trial takes away that risk, right? Allows for them to do it. If we do a one-off demo, there still is base sales sort of increase over a 4-week period. But if you do the repeat, one, you're going to capture more clients that, maybe just weren't shopping on that Saturday for the 4-hour event that we were doing. So you catch them sort of the next time around. But additionally, you're giving additional marketing impressions, and it's showing sort of the resources, because consumers, one of the things that we see from the research that comes back, get very nervous about new items because they feel as though it was introduced and then I can't find it anymore, right? And they don't want to invest that sort of bandwidth if they don't think that they're going to be able to get it long term. So seeing multiple demos over a period of time is going to give them sort of that impression subconsciously that this has longevity. Secondarily, from a store perspective, it reminds the store associates and the store managers and the people who potentially, in a lot of retailers, are going to be in charge of whether or not they're going to order more of the product. They're seeing that. So it's going to help you as well, because especially for new items, one of the biggest problems that I have is even if they're slotting paid, sort of the compliance from a store level and actually checking it. So one, the demo can check and double check, because we're making, we're going to need enough product to sample and to sell. But secondarily, it's going to give a better impression to the store associates that the brand is real and has staying power, and will give you better compliance from a reorder standpoint and shelf integrity standpoint. Um, so that sort of ties into the velocity signal to the buyers. But from a habit standpoint, we generally recognize that if somebody buys the same product 3 times, it becomes part of their regular purchasing sort of uh, cart, if you will, right? So we have to figure out a way. Okay, we got them purchased once. How do we remind them again? And demo isn't the only tool in your toolkit. I want people to understand this is one tool to the toolkit. You kind of have to approach it from a shopper marketing perspective, but it's a very important part of it. And not just because I run a demo company, right? But
No.
um, you really want to figure out the different ways that we can get them to buy it 3 times just to be able to sort of create that habit. Um, and then once they see the support from a retail standpoint on a consistent basis and not just a one-off basis, because there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot going on in stores. Um, you get the reorders, and now you have strong base sales. That's going to give the retailer confidence, and then they're going to start calling you for things. Hey, we have a special event that's going on. We'd like for you to be involved. Hey, we have this idea from a media group standpoint. We'd like for you to be involved, and it's going to give you opportunities because I think most people get it, but sometimes in the minutia of sales, we really forget that to the brand, the retailer is the customer, and then your customer 1B is the shopper, right? So it's really making that impression on the retailer to be invited to the party and sort of expand that relationship through not only demo support, but all the other support that we talk about from a shopper marketing perspective.
Thank you for sharing that. If you listen to any of my content, the key theme throughout everything is that the more you do for the retailer, that's how you differentiate yourself and become what I call a category leader. The point being is this, is that if you can do that to the point where the retailer trusts you and leans on you, you're going to get incremental opportunities not available to other brands. Let me repeat that again. This is your opportunity to get displays and opportunities that you may not have to pay for, that may not be available to other brands because you prove yourself at store. So thank you for sharing that. And then the
And
other
that's
point,
why
go ahead.
that's why I send people your way. I'm one piece of the cog,
Right.
right? You understand. I mean, granted, I understand other parts of it because I'm a student of the business, right? But that's where your value comes into play. Of, listen, I've done all these different things. I've been on the retailer side. You know, I know trade spend inside and out. That's where the value of you sort of being that fractional quarterback internally really shines through because brands don't realize how money can leak out the back door. And you're a very inexpensive, relatively speaking, option for that to make sure that the money is not leaking out the door. And any investment that somebody makes on your side, they're gonna make that money back fivefold, tenfold, 50-fold, depending on what their organization's doing and how they're doing it. Because I tell you what, there's a lot of brands that go in, get approved, and then ask the shopper marketing team, hey, what would you like me to do? And they sit there and dictate based off of their comp plan and the buckets that they need to fill. There's nothing wrong with that. They're doing their job the way that their comp plan is written at the retailer, but it doesn't mean that it translates to what's good for the brand and the retailer. It might only be good for a portion of that retailer's media group, but not that brand in particular. Anybody that has new items or they're coming through, and even if they have established items, but they're getting into a new retailer or they're trying to grow within that retailer, I really strongly suggest that they talk to you because it's not just about the demo, it's about the whole picture and where things make sense the most. And if you come in with a plan, one, you're going to gain more respect from the retailer, but two, you're going to be able to spend your money, generally speaking, where it makes the most sense for you. And sometimes you got to throw them a bone just to be able to help them out in one specific bucket. But holistically, generally speaking, everything is going to be moving you in the right direction towards a better relationship with the retailer and better sales where it matters.
Appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much. And where I the reason this matters, the reason I love working with you, the reason I love having this relationship with you is because you're the secret weapon. Having an experiential marketing opportunity where I can build a relationship not only to your point with the retailer, but the customer. The cool thing is this, if I am a customer, I go in and I look at a product on a shelf, your packaging has to do all the selling. And then
Right.
I take that product home. I like it, don't like it, whatever, but I don't know anything special about it. I don't know anything extra outside of what's written on your packaging. Assume I read it. If you set up the demo right, and again, this is your point of differentiation, because of the way you guys do this, you create a story in my mind that I can then share with other people. And the benefit of that is that, like I said, the lifts are exponential and they last. So thank you for saying that. And thanks for breaking all this out because I think it's important that people understand that this is a very, very, what you do is a very, very important strategic lever that people can rely on. And if you do this and do this right, this can create opportunity down the road. So thank you for sharing that. One of the things you kind of touched on a little bit are some of the biggest mistakes brands make. You talked about Mabel with the table. Love that reference. You shared a story with me once that just briefly, you were doing you heard about someone doing a demo for a vegan male and a customer came up and said, "How can they make mayo without eggs?" And the demo person said they can't. It kind of defeats the purpose. But can you talk about some of the mistakes that people make and how do you help people navigate around that so that this becomes a win?
Yeah, a couple things. I think one and done mentality, which I'll sort of dig into a little bit, not having that store level strategy, um, and then integration into the distribution and sales team for like bridging that gap. So whoever's handling it from a marketing perspective and sort of has that responsibility, making sure that I'm in touch with either the distributor, the broker, sales team, anybody, unless, of course, we already have an established, uh, continuity program with the said retailer. Then it's our responsibility, right? But making sure that product's on the table. So I kind of talked about that one and done mentality previously, right? Earlier in what we talked about. And it's really, we sampled in all the stores once, we checked the box, and then feel like, all right, we're at the finish line. Um, Figure out more strategically, do less stores multiple times, and strategically pick that. With data the way it is today, we have access where we have a data partner that we work with, where if we put in demographics and we put in the retailer, it'll spit out the top 20% of stores, right? Based off of the demographic, so we can make the biggest impact and we can be as strategic as possible. So and then take some time off from it, right? That it's not like demos have to happen in a continuous basis. But where I think people miss the boat really is once your brand's sort of established and things are humming, in a retailer, it's easy to sort of sit back because there's a bunch of fires burning. Let's be honest. Like you're trying to get into new retailers, you're planning for Expo West, you're planning for fancy food. It's show season. You have deductions that you're going to have to deal with from your distributor, and you're trying to tackle that. Go back to the retailers that are working well and delight them by sitting there saying, I know things are going well, but I think that they could be better, right? And I'd like to be able to strategically figure out where we can go and help make experiences. And sometimes it's a demo, it's a one-off demo that you're doing. Sometimes it's a co-demo. Who can I partner with? Hey, category manager, we're established. Is there a new item that you're in love with that you would like for us to partner with so we could help bring them along and we could help them be successful, but we could split the cost of the demos? Now you're sitting there putting yourself in your customer's head to sit there and go, this person actually cares about other products that they're not affiliated with because I care about them and they want to help me. That's a completely different approach than sort of things are going well at that retailer. We're going to do the bare minimum from a promotion standpoint because things are, we have to put the resources elsewhere. Um, that kind of ties into the store level strategy, but really looking at the data and understanding your retailer too. Is your retailer an early adopter or are they a laggard? Sort of, or are they somewhere in between? How innovative can they be? And that needs to sort of shape what you propose and put forward. Some people want clean floor plans. Shippers aren't an option. Stickers or shelf talkers, whatever. All these things help and all these things matter, but knowing your customer matters more. Um, we talked about demographics and volume tiers, um, and really treating all stores equally. Not all stores are equal, even within the same banner, right? There's some that are just small concept stores. Maybe that works for you, or maybe it doesn't. But understanding, what stores, this was something um, in particular that I remember. What the common understanding is that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday are the demo days. And that's where a lot of the foot traffic comes from. One of the things that we recognized really quick because we have a continuity program with a urban chain, and one of the things that we realized was 3 to 7 during the week, especially Wednesdays and Mondays, were awesome because we were catching people coming off the commuter trains and they were coming home and they were looking for, because of where they were, they couldn't carry a lot, right? So they would do their shopping multiple times a week. Um, and we recognized that Saturdays there wasn't as much foot traffic because you didn't have sort of that business commuter going back and forth doing their shopping for the next 2 or 3 days. So really knowing your retailer and knowing when to be there, and we can sort of help with that, obviously. Both you and I can sort of consult as it relates to that. And then, sorry, I'm talking so much,
No,
but
no, keep going.
the from an integration with the sales team, um, when you if we're the vendor of record and we have a continuity program where you sort of have to deal with us in that retailer, we'll have the ability to send a distro. But if it's Whole Foods, for example, or Fresh Market, where they don't have a specific demo partner that they utilize on a daily basis, and you're hiring us to do that, we're going to handle the coordination with the store. We're going to handle the schedule with the store. But a lot of times we'll ask, um, okay, we know the base sales. Can you order an extra 4 cases for the demo? And we hear, sure. And we follow up the week before, and it doesn't happen. We get there, there's 5 units on the shelf. We have to use some of that for sampling. And then we sell through it in a matter of an hour. That's not a good use of our time, and that's not a good use of your resources or the time you spent putting this all together. If we can get in touch with either the broker, the distributor, or sometimes even the buyer to make sure that they can do a distro and they can support it appropriately, or they will give you an inkling of whether or not they're actually going to support it and maybe want to consider reallocating those resources to something else if you don't have the confidence that there's going to be enough product there and that there's going to be a buy because if you're doing the support, you want to be able to get the buy-in from the players to make sure that there's going to be enough product present, not only for us to sample, but for us to actually increase those base sales.
I'm so glad that you talked about product being out of stock. At retail execution, let's talk about this. Let's back up. The worst thing in the world, and I'm just going to paint a picture for everyone listening, is to see a demo cart with your sign on it and nobody standing there.
Yeah.
And
It's
that's
worse than
not a,
not doing a demo.
it is. It is. It says that you don't understand your business. But the cool thing is that because of your relationship with the retailer, you're going to take the extra step. So if I'm running a demo, I don't know how much extra product I need, but you should have, as a side note, anytime you run a promotion, doesn't matter what kind of promotion is in a store, you should be able to tell the retailer, this is how much incremental product you need in every store individually, so that that product's on stock, so that you don't have out of stocks. Because when people measure their sales, if you run out of something, that's not picked up in the POS data, your sales data. That is a void, a blind spot. But first impression, right? If you have an out of stock, an empty hole on the shelf, that leaves a lasting impression with the consumer. So, long story short, the fact that you can help guide me and help work with me to make sure that I've got enough backstock, that's critically important. And then your other point about coordinating with the store and the store staff, this is, I think, perhaps one of the best values that you offer, because if I'm a brand, these are things I'm not taught. These are things that I don't understand. And if you can help me negotiate that so that I become the value added resource to the retailer, so that the retailer calls me up and says, hey, Dan, we've got an opportunity. Can you do this? So why does this matter? The grand opening of a superstore in Colorado. I was back when I was doing a DSD driver, and I sold the private label chips and also a regional chip. And because I had had such a good relationship with the retailer, Frito could not get a display in the store. They couldn't get an end cap or side sack or anything else.
That
I
says
had a
something right there, doesn't
4,900
it?
bag. Yeah, it was great. It was amazing. And by the way, I didn't have to pay for that. So, I
That's
mean,
huge.
it is huge. And this is how my whole reputation is built. And we're not talking about me, but the point is, this stuff works. This stuff makes a lot of sense. So thank you for sharing the fact that you can help guide me into that position so that I can maximize each and every opportunity. So thank you for that.
Let me add one more thing too. You
Sure.
know, when I think about professional execution, right? And the reason why I break out the training the way I do, the reality is I'm pulling from the same pool of talent, if you will, that other agencies are pulling through, right? The differentiator is how I prepare those individuals and the expectations that I set and how I hold them accountable, right? So, you know, when we when we put that training together, it's with the idea that we treat our people like assisted sales professionals, not samplers per se, right? They're talent. They're not just part-time W-2 workers, right? So we need to be able to, there's a reason why we're talking about the three main selling points, strategically written, so they can put talk tracks together. These are already naturally outgoing people, or they would have been merchandisers, right? There's a reason why they're demo people. They like talking to people. They like opening up conversations with new people. That talent they already have. It's really week to week, they're constantly introduced to new items. We need to follow a process that will create an environment of professional execution, of setting standards, giving them the why behind the selling points of why it's important so they can understand the dynamic within a conversation that they're having. This is effective communication that we're essentially trying to teach them and give them the tools to be able to do. And then the objection handling, is huge. I can remember there was a product that had palm oil in it, right? Um, and it was a great product, and people just wouldn't buy it. It was at Whole Foods, and we had a conversation because the demos brought out that the palm oil was part of the problem. A lot of people were objecting to it, and we saw that as trends throughout the reporting that we do. So they made a strategic decision because they had fair trade palm oil, but they didn't go through the process because it was expensive and all of that. So they went through the process and they were able to put that it was fair trade palm oil. People didn't buy it, right? Because they just didn't think that that was what it was. So they changed it to a separate oil that was much more effective. Within a matter of 4 months, their overall sales spiked like 35%. And it was a game changer for them. That long-term change that came from the feedback from the demos funded their line extensions. They're super successful now. I mean, but there were times where they were like, why did we get out of tech? Why did we get out of finance to start this natural food company? But it mattered, right? And so we've talked a lot about how the sales are going to convert, but also really the data that we're going to be able to provide. We're going to be able to provide the trends on the back end because these people are professional, assisted sales people. And we're going to be capturing photos. We're going to be capturing other information from a data that we can sort of cultivate together as a team, both you, me, and the brand, to be able to sit there and say, what other information can we gather that will make this spend worth it to us? Potentially it's competitive information. Hey, we need a picture of a specific other brand that's sold within the store, a picture of ours just to see how it's slotted, so we can go back and sit there and say we paid for slotting fees. Please help us from a compliance standpoint. So giving them the proof necessary to be able to do that. And there's a lot of ways that we can bring value other than putting Mabel in behind the table at the end cap.
That's funny. I appreciate your saying that. So the key word here, the takeaway is confidence. You're giving the brand confidence that they can rely on you to get the job done and do it right, that you're going to be professional, that the people that you're going to put in there are going to maximize each and every opportunity. And you're giving the retailer confidence that they know that you're going to do that brand's going to do everything right. And the point there is that going back to what we've been talking about, the retailer needs to have trust. When they look at a brand, it used to be, hey, I'm a nice guy, please put my product on the shelf. But now you're giving that retailer confidence that they can trust that you're going to grow sales, increase foot traffic, all that stuff, things retailers want. I love your story about the palm oil. That's something that goes above and beyond what we're talking about. So when a brand makes a product and they put it out there, they assume everyone's going to like it. And for you to help validate that is gold. So a brand could spend not billions, but a ton of money. Big brands spend a lot of money doing this. And
Mhm.
a lot of times that money's wasted. We could go on for hours about stories of where brands failed. Focus group said this would be great and it didn't. But the point is, now you're actually having customers, real live people tell you, give you feedback in real time. Hey, here's what I like, here's what I don't like, so that the brand can pivot and then explode sales. That is a great story. So thank you for sharing that. So
And we'll also filter because there's sometimes where you get certain feedback that's maybe inaccurate that a brand's like, hey, I want to jump on this. And it's like, not every feedback is the right thing. Maybe you're in the wrong retailer, right?
good
If it's
point.
a natural specialty brand and it's really healthy and it's a really clean label and you're selling it at a certain retailer where the shopper isn't looking for that, don't make change it. Like, we'll help you from an advisement standpoint to sit there and say, this isn't actionable other than maybe you're not in the right place. Let's focus your resources on retailers that fit your ethos and sort of brand a little bit better. Or, hey, this is actionable. We're seeing this wherever we go, and this is hurting your growth potential in the retailers that matter. And we'll help sort of differentiate that on the back end as well.
That's a great selling point. So thank you for sharing that. So samplers, to recap, is going to partner with you in this as opposed to someone who's just going to take a paycheck to hand out samples. That's a wasted money. In fact, actually, when I talk about Expo West, it's not a sampling event, it's a trade event. And the
Yeah.
point being is this kind of very relevant to what we're talking about is that instead of just handing stuff out, getting feedback, understanding what people like, what they don't like. And the other cool thing is you could be getting testimonials for me so that when I go into the retailer or maybe even a future retailer, I have quote unquote pre-sold the product so that I've got validation behind it. So thank you for sharing that. Can you talk about the right model, demo versus a system? So how do you, when you're setting this up, how do you structure this? If I'm coming to you, I don't know what I don't know. So how do you do that? The cadence, the store segment, you talked a little bit about this, but what are some of the things that you would ask me or help me lead into so that I can maximize each and every opportunity with you?
Yeah. So we start, and it really depends on where you are with the retailer, right? Are you in already, or are you just launching in a store? If it's a launch, it's really going back to the buyer and saying, what are your top 20-30% of stores, and we're gonna go and capture those. If it's an established brand and you at least have some time under your belt, it's going to be going and asking the retailer or figuring out in different ways that you can help them with, what sort of those mid-range, where's the biggest potential for growth going to come from and education going to come from, and identifying those stores. From there, concurrently, we're going to be working on training and making sure that that's good. And then at the same time, my team's going to be going out scheduling. So we're going to be evangelizing and communicating with the individual stores to be able to put a schedule out, usually 4 to 6 weeks out. The A team of brand ambassadors generally make their schedule 4 to 6 weeks out. If it gets under 4 weeks, you kind of go into the B squad. If it gets under sort of 2 or 3 weeks, it's whoever happens to be available at that time. They get to pick what they want to do. We want to capture the really good people early. So we'll get that schedule and we'll get that done. At that point, it's really about us getting in touch with the distro team, whoever's going to be in charge of that distro. Is it a broker? Is it going to be a distributor? Is it going to be somebody internally that sits inside corporate? Because a lot of times people will take the easy way out and say, well, the store is going to handle it. Just please ask them to do it. It probably has, when a store is responsible for the order, we generally see about a 70% compliance rate. And that's not good, right? That can blow up a demo program or any sort of program. So what we'll generally try and do is to push back. Usually we'll utilize our relationships to be able to go in to the retailer to sit there and say, here's the support that's going to happen over the next 3 to 6 months. What can we do to get some help to make sure that we're going to have enough product? Here's the product array that we're going to be utilizing. Can we push that in? And it's obviously much easier when we're the vendor of record for the retailer because we can easily do that. Sometimes it's harder with the ones that don't have a centralized demo program, and we're sort of coming in ad hoc where we're bringing everything in and taking everything out with us. Um, then we'll talk about sort of what that setup's going to look like. So, what's the person going to be wearing? Um, how is it going to be merchandised? How is it going to be prepped? And then we'll strategize as it relates to the reporting. What information do you want to capture? Because sales is one KPI, if you will, but what are some of the other marketing and sales KPIs that we can have to be able to make sure that we can give you a nice snapshot on the back end that you can utilize as a selling tool when your broker is inevitably gets you that meeting to sit there and talk about your future promotional schedules, line extensions, any other promotional support that's going to happen.
Andrew, thank you for sharing this. I guess the key point I want to come back to is that we're talking about confidence, confidence in the brand and confidence to the retailer. And one of the things I want to really emphasize is your relationship with the brand. If I'm a founder and the retailer says, "Hey, I need you to do demos," I'm thinking, I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the time. I don't have the ability to structure, to hire people, to train people, whatever. The point that you will take over and do everything for me in partnership with me, so I'm not operating alone. You're not going to blindside me. You're going to help me guide me through this process so that I can maximize every opportunity. And then not only are you going to do that, but you're going to give me the feedback on the back end. I think that's critically important because when I'm looking at measuring this and understanding this, that's, I think, the missing piece. That's how I'm able to turn this into a strategic growth lever that I can measure and then look at ways to maximize this down the road. With that said, what am I missing? Anything? And is there anything you want, any dots you want to connect?
Yeah, I love the way that you framed it. The only thing that I would even add to it is that samplers as a culture, right? The way that we hire, the fact that we have a very flat hierarchy where a lot of our support's out in the field, we structured it because we understand what brands and retailers go through. And we're not just looking at it through the silo of demos, right? We understand all of the other challenges. I've run my own brands before, right? People who work internally have worked at retailers. They've worked, at other marketing agencies where it wasn't just about demos. It might have been a holistic marketing agency. Um, so we're able to see the different perspectives and we're able to see the different challenges that people face day to day. So you sort of said it. We're handling it, but we're staying in constant communication with you, where our job is to be your ultimate support for what we specialize in. And there's a lot of agencies out there that um, try and be everything to everyone, right? Quite honestly, they're your broker, they're your private label, they're your demo company. They do everything okay, right? We specialize in creating those experiences and the process that goes into play to make these events successful. And that's a huge differentiator, not only for the brand, but for the retailer as well, right? So it's like, and there's a benefit to the brand in that regard because if we make it easier for the retailer, it's that much better for the brand because the retailer is looking at that brand through a different lens. So, um, we understand that this isn't the only thing you're doing too, right? So, you know, especially when it's a launch, there's a lot going on. We're going to be a good use of your time. We're not going to overdo it, but we're not going to leave you on an island either and be like, okay, we've got it. We're going to go handle it. Wish us luck because we understand that it's people's livelihoods, it's people's jobs, and they need to be able to know what we're doing, throughout the process. And whether it's a shared Google Doc or, a check-in because we're a couple weeks out, we just want to give you an update as to where we are. I mean, that goes a hell of a long way. So when inevitably your boss comes and says, "Hey, where are we at with this launch?" You have the information at your fingertips and you're in the know, but you're not in the weeds.
Love that. So to recap that, you every brand wants to convert their occasional shopper into a loyal evangelist. You are going that extra step where you're helping me, the brand, convert me to a loyal evangelist, not only for you, but helping me understand how to maximize each and every opportunity. And I love how that ties back to this is the way you would treat your customer. Here's how we're going to treat you, the brand. So thank you for sharing you and you, the retailer. So thank you for sharing that. Any parting comments, anything else you want to share, Andrew?
If anybody's struggling with this, and if anybody's sort of, having hiccups or they haven't had the greatest experience in the world, call Dan first, right? And kind of do that Six Sigma 360 sort of assessment just to understand where you're at. And then from there, it's a natural progression where, you're great at seeing where the leaks are, right? And figuring out what makes the most sense. Sometimes, quite honestly, I may not be the right tool in the tool belt. But the thing that I love about you is if a brand calls me and says, "Hey, I don't know how to do this, but I trust you. Is it something that you can help me with?" Generally speaking, my first call is to you
Appreciate that.
if I don't know the answer. So you're sort of the hub, if you will, and there's offshoots. Some of the people that you've introduced me to, the Brian Bukas of the world, right? You
Mhm.
know, invaluable not only to my profession but just life, because especially in the natural specialty space, the thing I think I love most about it is just the camaraderie and the ecosystem that we're building and have built over our careers. And that matters and that's meaningful because I know how much time we all spend at work, and being able to enjoy the people that you work with, it's a game changer when it comes to quality of life.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and thank you right back at you. I love the fact that I can connect you with someone, and I know that they're in good hands. And you guys are absolutely amazing, and I love the fact that you guys have that company culture because that's what this industry is about. It's the relationship. So thank you so much for sharing that. And again, cannot thank you enough for coming on, Andrew. Thanks for making time for me today and for not only sharing your story, but helping to differentiate why this matters and how I can maximize this as a strategic growth lever. So thank you.
Anytime. I appreciate you very much.
And likewise, thanks, Andrew.
Have a good day. Bye.
Appreciate it. You don't have a sales problem, you have a visibility problem. Most brands rely on reports to understand their business, but those reports don't show you what actually happened in store. The Retail Audit Checklist helps you quickly identify gaps in execution, placement, pricing, and promotion so you can fix what's costing you sales. This is one of the fastest ways to improve performance without spending more. If you want to see what others miss and act faster, download the Retail Audit Checklist in the show notes. Thanks again for joining us today. Please reach out and share your most pressing questions, and I'll do my best to get you the answers that you need on future episodes, including with expert advice from CEOs and industry thought leaders. Comment, leave your questions, and get this week's free downloadable guide and the show notes at retailsolve.com/session 317.